Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Remember, we're also live streaming now on the WLAE-TV YouTube page as we go live here at 1 o'clock on WLAE-TV. We're live from Pontchartrain Production Studios. I'd like to say it's a beautiful day in Old New Orleans, but for the second week in a row, it's not. And it's about to get really hot. It's August. We know how that goes. So again, get out there and enjoy the little bit of cool that you have from a passing rainstorm. Tonight is a very, very special night here on the program. A mentor, someone that I've admired my entire life, a guy that I've watched on TV since I don't want to age him any, but
which means I'm old.
since I was a young kid, just really enjoying sports for the first time, and a guy that's helped me throughout my career and so many others. And of course, he's being inducted into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Roe Brown joins us on the program. We'll take a look back at his career. We'll talk about sports here in this town. A little bit different as we kind of do when we normally do, but again, something that needed to be done to really put a spotlight on the career of Roe Brown. Roe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for being with us.
For being on the award-winning Inside New Orleans Sports.
You know, that's our tagline.
So that's something you did,
That's
okay?
our tagline. Well, actually,
I didn't do it, you did.
We did. Well, Will is right there with me. Will, of course, our director. He is an incredible director. Roe, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, we were talking a little bit about it before the show began, and I say long overdue, and you start laughing because you're going, well, no, it's not really long overdue, but to a lot of people in this town, it's long overdue. That you be recognized for what you've done in this town in terms of sports, but also what you've done in terms of in this town in terms of opening doors for people of all ages, all colors, all females, males, to have an opportunity to get into this business. And there are so many people that could line up today and talk about a Roe Brown story on how Roe Brown helped them. And I'm one of them. It's too modest.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome, Roe.
But, I don't know. I guess I was raised to where, whatever you do, you're supposed to be of service to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess when people say things like you're saying, I guess I did that.
You did
to
it.
a degree. And, and for that, I'm glad. It's quite an honor. As I told you before, it's uncomfortable.
Yes, I know what it is for you.
Because, I never, yeah, I never did it for, recognition of me. And I, sometimes people say to my detriment, I did it that way. But it's very nice. It's very nice, and I'm glad that a lot of people think, or a number of people think, I helped them in some kind of way.
Well, a lot of people in this town, and again, not just in this town, but across the nation, feel the same way. Because you did it. Again, you were always giving. You've always, anytime someone's had a question or needed a little bit of guidance, you've always been there. And there are so many people that can tell that story. Roe, everybody's got a story on again, how they got into this business or wanted to get into this business, but you were a trailblazer. It wasn't easy for Roe Brown, growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, to become a sportscaster in this town. Talk a little bit about, again, your background, where you went to school. Here we want to know where you went to high school, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I know where you went to college, but I want to know where you went to high school. So take us from the beginning. Take us from, again, where you grew up here in the city. Tell us a little bit about Roe Brown.
I'm sorry about the handkerchief. I'm like Louis Armstrong. You got me crying right away. Anyway,
Louis Armstrong is a pretty good comparison for anybody.
Yeah,
right.
I'll take that anytime
anyway. Especially in this town.
It starts, I think, with my parents. Okay. And both parents. My father, especially. But my parents. I can tell you the exact date that I thought about being a sportscaster. Okay. July 17th, 1965.
What happened on that day?
I was part of a Lyndon Johnson Great Society anti-poverty program called RER, Reading, Enrichment, and Recreation. Okay. At my junior high school, Lawless Junior High. I was 13 at the time. Yeah, 13. Yeah. And it's what it was, reading, enrichment, and recreation. You went to school and you had academic courses and you had recreation, you had enrichment. Yes. One of the enrichment things was we took a tour of WDSU TV, Channel 6. All right. Ironically, which I spent a lot of time there later on. Quite a few years. And it's the first time I thought about, wow, this would really be cool. But it was 1965, and there were no African Americans on television then doing news or sports or weather or anything like that. So, it's kind of, I guess it was kind of far-fetched. I don't remember telling people that at the time. But for some reason now, there are people who, I grew up with who told me, I always knew you were going to do. No, you didn't. But they say, I always knew that's what you were going to do. I wasn't surprised. But, that's kind of when it started. Okay. That was the exact date. Some people did a lot of hard work and had to put up with a lot of things, I guess, to enable me to be able to do this, really do it a decade later. And, those people were very, very important. But my parents were very important. I had a father who, people always marvel at how much I know or remember. My dad was it. Okay, my dad, and not just sports, just anything. Both of my parents were that way. They were always telling you things, asking you things. You know what used to be over there? You know what building was there? That used to be such and such, I'm at a sporting event, my dad said, see that guy sitting over there? That's Mark Simons. He did such and such, first Sugar Bowl, and that kind of, okay, and it was just constantly that kind of stuff. And sitting at the kitchen table with him, asking me about things that he knew I couldn't possibly know or remember, but he knew that I would get angry and he would make me go look it up. Right. And this is before Google.
That's right. You had to look it up in an encyclopedia, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Right. Or some sort of almanac. Yes. We always, my parents are, almanacs and encyclopedias. Right. As I mentioned before, I had a subscription to Sports Illustrated. I was under 10 years old, and my mom, they bought it for me. They got it for me. We had subscriptions to magazines, Time, Esquire, Life and Look, other magazines that people don't know about
Yes.
at this time.
Yes, right,
You know, that
right.
sort of thing. My Sports Illustrated thing, and you know, there was just always reading and books and music and just history, and that's where it came from.
Right. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Carver and Kennedy. I went to both schools.
Right.
I would say in 10th grade I went to Carver, and I graduated from Kennedy
Okay.
here in New Orleans. Then I went to SUNO for 2 years.
Right.
Went into the Navy for 4 years. Ocular hospital corpsman.
Hospital corpsman.
Hospital corpsman.
And what years were that?
That was 1971 to 75. I
Okay.
was what they called an ocular technician. I worked in an ophthalmology clinic.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I could do a cataract extraction. I could. Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
I was the you know, one of the instrument
Right.
nurses. I mean, you know, you get to a point where you see enough of them done. You know, I mean,
Well.
I could have done it. I
Right.
mean, I'm not saying I did, but I
But you
could have.
coulda.
Yeah,
Right.
you get to a
Right.
point where the doctor, you know, you're sitting there talking about the game you watched the other night, you know, and he doesn't have to ask for I know what he needs when, you know, when you do it enough. And that was good. If I was going to be in the Navy, I didn't want to chip paint off ships.
No, of course not. Where were you
I
stationed?
didn't particularly want to go to Vietnam,
Well,
which was going on
that was
then.
why I asked you the years.
Yeah. I was stationed at the Naval Hospital in Portsmouth, Virginia.
Okay.
So was Mary, my wife. That's where we met.
Okay.
And 1975, got out, came back, went to Loyola, and was there for 2 years, and you know, majored in mass communications.
Right.
Ran into people all in one class, like Ed Daniels, Kenny Trahan, Peter Finney Jr., Jimmy Smith. The list goes on and on and on.
What a class, right?
Oh yeah, we had a lot. yeah. People that went on and did some pretty good stuff.
They were influential in sports in this town.
Yeah,
When you talk
yeah.
about from a media standpoint.
Yeah, you know, and also news people. I mean,
Right,
Lynn
yes.
Ganser was there.
Okay.
You know, Lynn was there, and Steve Ozenovich, if you remember him. There were a lot of people. I always thought it was funny, Eric. It was the first day you got there, they told you, one, don't expect to find a job. And two, don't think about working in your hometown.
Right.
And I don't know if we got lucky, but we all ended up
did,
working.
right.
A lot of us did,
Yeah.
put it that way.
Mary, where was she a native of?
Gary, Indiana.
Okay.
Gary, Indiana.
Felt you shocked for her
She's a
to move
Hoosier.
to New Orleans, Louisiana?
In a good way.
Yeah.
I always tell this story. First time she came here was August 4th, 1974. You know, people think it's strange I remember dates, but I do. And walking across Canal Street, and she asked me a question that I didn't have an answer for. Why is that man standing on the corner playing a saxophone? You know,
That's what we do.
I never, you know. 1 year later, we went to Dallas. No, not 1 year later. You know, 1 year after she moved here, we got married. We went to Dallas. After living here 1 year, they don't even have a place here where you could get a stuffed pepper. I'm going, 1 year ago, you didn't know that it was a stuffed pepper. And then now you're complaining about people's food. So my point is, she's a real New Orleanian.
Yes.
You know,
Might not be New Orleans born, but New Orleans certified.
she is, you know, I mean, listen to music,
Yes.
that drummer, I can tell he's not from New Orleans. He doesn't, you know, one of those.
How many
So,
children?
One, Amanda, 32.
Yeah.
Be 33 in October.
Yeah. From Loyola, what happened next?
From Loyola, well, they kind of intersected. While I was at Loyola, I had 2 jobs. I worked for the New Orleans Jazz.
Okay. We're going to get into that a little bit later.
And I worked at WDSU
Okay.
as a production assistant, a job that I got there because of Warren Bell,
Okay. The great Warren Bell.
the great Warren Bell, who's the weekend anchor at DSU at the time, who was also the shop steward, AFTRA, the union. He put in a union contract that they had to have a minority reporter trainee. Understand, unions were strong then.
Yes.
If you weren't in AFTRA, if you weren't in the union, you couldn't be seen or heard on television.
Right.
You couldn't hold a microphone. Okay. You couldn't write something for someone else to read. Because I fell under the union contract, I could write for somebody else to read something on the air, and I could do interviews but I couldn't be seen or heard,
Right.
which was fine with me,
Okay.
because I was doing everything a reporter did except being on the air, and that was very important.
For you as that young man, young child going through WDSU and looking around going, think I can do that, to a production assistant at WDSU, what was that like?
It was, you're nervous at first.
Right.
Yeah, you are, but it was kind of, it made you kind of awestruck.
Right.
Because you saw people. I'm glad I got into the business when I did.
Okay.
Okay.
And what year was that?
And that was 1976.
Okay.
October of 76.
All right.
And I'm glad I did, because I got to meet people who were still around, who were in television from day one.
Right, when it started.
They
right?
were there from
Right.
day
Right.
one. Okay, you know what I mean?
And if I'm not mistaken, WDSU, the first television station in New Orleans, right?
Yes. Great station. Historically great.
In the French Quarter?
In the French Quarter.
Right.
And that made it even more so. Because I mean, this was a station that I mean, Channel 4, WWL took over ratings and everybody, but and I love both of these people. They were great, but television did not start in New Orleans. Television didn't start with Garland and Angela.
No, it did not.
Okay, it just didn't. And but it started with those people who really were giants, in the industry. I mean, at WDSU, I mean, Bill Monroe
Right.
was the news director at DSU, the meet the press guy,
Yes.
and there were people, Ford Rowan went off and went, Defense Department, and there were just a lot of people who had a lot to do with television. I mean, I actually knew Mel Levitt.
Right.
And I run into people now, and
Right.
people,
Right.
he was Mr. Television.
Yes, he was.
Now, he was gone from Channel 6 when I got there, but, I mean, I got to be around these people. And there were a lot of people who helped me, and I got to say this, who were in that building, who were there from day one, who were behind the scenes people.
Yes.
Engineers and camera people.
Right.
Who really helped me. And for some reason, and the industry was changing then. It was changing as far as from getting rid of film and going to videotape, and it's sometimes difficult for those people to change and to move with it.
Yes.
And they didn't like it, and not all of them did, and a lot of them resisted it, and
Yes.
they didn't like these young people coming in, and a lot of times they didn't like these young black people coming in who weren't there before.
Right.
For some reason, those people bent over backwards for me.
It's great.
And I got to say that.
Yes.
I mean, they really did.
It was tough back then, wasn't it, for an African American to break into this industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough, but but you gotta persevere, and you just have to go through it. I thought about this again because somebody made me think about it yesterday, Eric. I can remember having a conversation in the newsroom, like you do on weekends.
Yes.
It's just, it's people in general conversation. We're talking about work and talking about careers. And I made the statement that I got my job because of affirmative action. And people were horrified that I would say that about myself, that I would insult them. I said, well, what are you horrified about? I said, it's true. And I explained the, minority reporter training thing.
Right.
I mean, that's, and they said, no, you got your job because you're good. I said, no, I got my job because of affirmative action. I kept it because I was good.
Yes. Yes.
But I got it because of affirmative action. And that's something I've never been ashamed to say, And I'm also not ashamed to say I kept it because I was good.
Yeah, that's for sure. When you see today, and you see people of color, females, and you see the diversity in broadcasting, how does it make you feel for someone that came into the business when, again, there were not a lot of folks that looked like you?
Right. Very glad about it. I'm very happy about it. It's the way that it should be. Yeah. Here's where I throw people off who have asked me this. I am concerned, and I think if I have to do anything, I have to continue to get more black males in sports journalism. Now, I know what everybody's thinking when you say that. I said black males in sports journalism. Here's the dilemma you have if you are a black male. It might be harder for me to get into this industry now if I was coming out. It would be more difficult now than perhaps it was in 1976.
And why is that?
And this is why. They have found a way to shrink the pool of African American applicants and candidates in sports journalism. You know how? You got to be an ex-athlete.
Okay. Right.
You got to be an ex-athlete. Okay? And we all know that's a very small pool. How many of those do we have?
Right. And then how many want to go in with the money they make now? How many want to go into that?
Exactly. But my point is that, so what it sets up, Eric, and if you can follow this, I don't know if this will make sense to you. I think that, all of the females, be they black or white or whatever, I think it's great that they're in, and they came in very quickly. And the numbers rose very quickly, very quick, and it continues to rise, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. I think it's great. I'm all for it. However, if I was coming out now, I was a really good athlete. Really good. I have no problem saying that. Never bothered playing on anybody's team in school or anything. The only time I played on a team was in the service.
Okay.
And which is also funny. The people from the Northeast would ask, "How did you learn to play basketball?" But anyway, that's. But if you are a black male, that's the only demographic where, if you didn't play, how could you know about what you're talking about?
Right.
They don't ask that of white males.
Right.
They don't expect that of white females. They don't expect that of black females. So if you are a young African American who wants to get into this, that's something that you're probably going to have to deal with now.
There's a stereotype.
Who did you play for?
Right, exactly. I never thought of it that way. But again, when you look around, you can see it.
Think about it.
No, I can see it.
Look at it.
Yes.
Look at it, okay? And, and if you are in, you have to have some sort of shtick, like Stephen A. Smith, who I don't have a problem with.
Sure.
Because Stephen A. Smith, he's there because he was a daily columnist for a major newspaper for 20 years and was really good. And that's how he got there.
Yes.
Now he's making his money by doing, what he's doing now, and that's fine. So that's a kind of different situation. But the young guy like me, who doesn't have a pro career behind him, he doesn't see a lot of people like me.
Right.
You don't see a lot of Stan Barrett.
Right. Right.
Okay, you don't see that.
Yes.
So you tend not to go in that direction.
Right.
And so that's, I'm not sure what can be done about it. I'm not sure if we can do anything about it in whatever lifetime I have left. But
well, the fact that you're saying it opens up people's eyes to it.
Yeah, and I'm sure people never thought about it that way.
Honestly, I did not think about it, and I'm in the industry.
I mean, nobody questions, we don't question whether or not, say, Linda Cohn knows what she's talking about.
Right.
She didn't play in the NFL either.
Right. True.
Or the NBA.
Well, they say the same thing about me.
Yeah, so why should we expect, this young black guy coming in, you're kind of leery of him because he didn't play.
Right.
And that's real.
No, and something we hadn't thought about. Mentors for you coming up in this business. Who were they?
Well, I would say Warren Bell, and I would say Ed Harding.
Okay, who is Ed Harding? Because we talked about it before the show started, and you educated me.
Okay.
And because he changed the way sports was reported in this town.
I believe that. If there's one thing that I would be proud of as far as accomplishing in this business was that I had a hand in changing the way sportscasts were done.
And tell folks how that happened.
Ed Harding was a guy who came to Channel 6 in 1978. He replaced Greg Fox. Some people will probably remember Greg Fox, but for whatever reason, they don't remember Ed Harding. Maybe because he was here from 1978 to about 1981. Ed Harding came from the Twin Cities, Minneapolis. He was hired as the sports director at Channel 6. He came in and I think changed the way sportscasts were done. I was already there as a production assistant, working in news and in sports. He came in and he just had a different way of doing sportscasts that we kind of take for granted now. At the time, if you were old enough to remember, sportscasts, local sportscasts in New Orleans consisted of really only a few things.
Yes.
Okay? They did all 10 race results every day.
Every day.
They did the feature race, stretch run every day.
Every day.
That's a minute and a half or maybe 2 minutes of a sportscast that usually ran maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Okay? Ed Harding came in and his thing was local sports. And he had to have time to do those local sports. So he came in and he did sportscast the way that he saw them done. It hadn't come here to New Orleans yet, and I guess he brought it here. He sat there one day and he asked me, what will happen if I don't do all 10 race results every day? I said, well, you know what will happen. Okay? You know, I mean,
phones are lighting up.
yeah. People are going to be complaining.
And they lit up back then, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You know. Why didn't you give the result? You know,
Right.
it's what we expected and what we've always gotten.
Right.
You know, and you know how we are. I mean, we're great people here. I mean, you know, love this town. I'm New Orleans through and through, but we like our things the way they've been done.
That's right.
For a long time.
That's right. True.
And that kind of changed. And so, you know, you weathered that storm. And he also went to the news director and he said, Roe needs to be a reporter. You need to give him full reporter status. You know he's doing everything a reporter does. And everybody here knows that. You know, Roe can put together a sportscast. He can produce, and I don't even have to, you know, if I don't want to. Okay, he can do that. We all know that. And the news director said, yes, that's true. So Ed Harding told me, okay, take the bull by the horns. I'm not from here. You're from here. You go do whatever you want to do.
Give you a mic,
We had
give
our
you a
own
camera.
cameraman. We had a cameraman who shot nothing but sports at the time, MJ Goche.
Yes.
Legendary cameraman,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and that sort of thing. And we shot 3-4 stories a day.
That was unprecedented, right? I mean, this wasn't being done, right?
Yeah, we shot 3-4 stories a day.
So you'd go from high
Local
school to college to the pros.
Saints
Didn't matter.
Yeah, and Ed did stories.
Right.
Sportscast at 5, 6, and 10. Every sportscast had to be different. You know, he never did a sportscast that was the same. Never. Okay. So he would tell me, you got a minute, 20 seconds at 5 o'clock. You know, I need a voiceover on either that story or on whatever else you shot, just a voiceover, soundbite or whatever at 5 o'clock, and another package at 10. You know, you got a minute, 30 seconds to do that. And it sent me around to a lot of places, or I sent myself around to a lot of places, okay? And places that hadn't been covered before, schools that hadn't been covered before, you know, features on women's basketball at Tulane and Xavier in 1978.
Right, nobody.
4 years before the NCAA even had a women's basketball tournament. And, you know, it was great. It was great. It was great. And I think it forced the others.
Right. Everybody started
doing it. And then you had somebody like Jim Henderson. He had come about the same time.
Yes, right. Right, 78, right?
Yeah, come about the same time. And, you know, we know Jim went through. I mean, he had to have, you know, police protection and all.
Because he replaced Hap.
You know, yeah. And so it was a good time. And it was a great time for me. You know, I mean, I just learned so much from him.
Right.
And you know, the more you do it, the better you came at it, just like anything.
Anything, yeah.
And it was just perfect. I could go where I wanted to go. I could cover what I wanted to cover. He never questioned anything, you know. He had withdrawal because he'd never grown up any place where there wasn't Major League Baseball. I told him, well, we got 2 really good college baseball programs. Okay?
Which were at that time?
Tulane and UNO.
Right.
Okay? And you know, Mace was at UNO, and Joe Brockoff was at Tulane. I mean,
they were good.
Strong, both of them. So, you know, hey, we covered that just like we covered everything else. You know, shot all the games or parts of them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and had video to do features when we wanted to do it and everything, and so it was just, it was really, that was, yeah, I don't want to say it was the best time, because the best time may have been working with Buddy and Ed and Vince Marinelli, you know, but yeah, yeah, you know, where it was just, but those, it was just, yeah, whatever I did good in this business came from, you know, those times, that 3 years with Ed Harding, who, by the way, was fired and replaced by Buddy. 3 years later, in 1981.
He was at 8 first, right?
They got rid of Buddy.
Right, and then he went
Channel
to 6.
6 got him,
Grabbed him,
and replaced him.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, continue the conversation with Roe Brown. We're going to find out a little bit more about, again, what he's, you know, his path to where he is now in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. An induction that's going to be coming up very, very soon. And then we're going to talk a bit about the teams as well. Want to look back with the great teams here in New Orleans, the ones he covered. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. It is our pleasure to have legendary Roe Brown as our guest.
Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Roe Brown is with us. He's going to be inducted into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame this year. Matter of fact, Ron Yeager, of course, who worked with you at Channel 6, who's our boss here at WLAE, just came in to give his congratulations to you as well. A lot of people work with Roe Brown.
Good man.
Yeah, he is. Okay, before you got to Channel, you ended up in Lake Charles at one point in your career, right? Is that right after Loyola? Or was that?
No.
Or was that?
I was at Channel 6.
Okay, and then what happened?
I was a reporter at Channel 6. Okay. In April of 1980, they were looking for a weekend sports anchor.
Okay.
I'd never anchored before.
Only reported?
Yeah. So they decided one weekend, okay, you're going to anchor the shows this weekend. Never forget, it was a weekend of the Masters, first week in April. We had one of those New Orleans downpours, streets flooded. I walked from the lower 9th Ward to Channel 6 because I didn't want to drive.
Right.
Because of the street flooding. Had to put together the shows myself, had to anchor, never anchored before. Got there, time for sports. Here's Roe Brown with sports, such and such, such and such. What's going on? And I opened my mouth, and this is what you heard. I forgot to put the microphone on.
Oh.
And in those days, they kept the microphones under the desk. And so I had to climb under the desk.
Right.
On the air, live.
Oh.
And put it on,
Right.
you know, and so on. Okay. 10 o'clock comes, same thing happened.
Wow. Okay.
So, you know, Ed said, look, you did fine once you got started, you know, and I didn't do fine, you know. Yeah, I didn't anchor. So Ed Daniels was in Lake Charles. Dave Walker was the news director, who was an anchor at Channel 8 at one point, and then at CNN. And, you know, a couple weeks after that, Ed said, man, we're looking for a weekend. You need to come out with me. Ed called me. Dave Walker called. Went out to Lake Charles. So Ed Daniels and I were in the sports department at KPLC in Lake Charles for 14 months. I came back to New Orleans, news director at Arthur Alpert was the news director at Channel 6. And I came in to visit one time, stopped at Channel 6, and I'd never met him before. And he said, why don't you send me a tape? Okay. And I sent him a tape, and he hired me. Back, you know, he told me that, you know, he said that, you know, because he just hired Buddy. In Channel 6. He said, he told me, I said, well, I called Buddy in, and I said, I want you to look at somebody, you know. Just put the tape in, because he said, I had Buddy look at all the candidates. I put your tape in, and looked at it, and I can't do it like Arthur did it. You know, nobody do it, but oh, that's Roe. Oh yeah, bring it back. That's how Arthur described it.
That's pretty good one.
So, yeah. And so that's how I came back. That was August 10th of '81.
Ed joined you shortly. Ed Daniels joined you shortly.
Like late '82. Like February of '82. You know, and Buddy told me, he said, well, I'm giving Ed back here too, and he did.
So it was Buddy, Vince Marinello, Ed Daniels, Roe Brown. I mean, that was an all-star lineup.
Well, you know, I don't know if it was all-star, but it was four guys who were where they wanted to be.
New Orleans?
Yeah. And four guys who, you know, had different, you know, I mean, we fed off each other, you know. We could go to each other for, you know, information or advice or who should I talk to for this. It was just a terrific time to work there with those guys. And I mean, they became, you know, like, Ed is like family, and Buddy was, and Vince was too. They were like parts of my family, you know.
Talk about WBOK Radio. What it means to you.
Well,
what it means to our community.
Yeah, what it means, you know, it's what they like to call sometimes a legacy station.
There's no doubt.
And I want to say that, you know, I don't know if I would call this full disclosure, but, you know, I'm on a number of halls of fame voting committees. Okay, when you get old, that's what you get to do, and that's fine. That's good.
When you are accomplished, that's what you get to do. Let me say that. Okay.
You know, and one of those, I'm on the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Selection Committee. I have nothing to do with me going into the hall, but I've been on it for 5 years, and I really got to say that, you know, for 5 years I've advocated for the Distinguished Service Award in Media, Champ Clark.
Yes.
And the reason why is because of, you know, it's just obvious, because of, you know, what he did for how long.
Absolutely.
You know, and like I said, I mean, it's, you know, and I don't say this in a good way. I mean, Champ wasn't always very nice to me, and that's immaterial. I don't care about that, you know. But, you know, he's somebody who, you know, somebody like him deserves something like this a lot more than I do.
As much as
he does. Okay, yeah, and I mean, he's not the only one. I mean, Mr. Stockard, R.L. Stockard, won this award. I think it was 2008. Mr. Stockard has passed away, and you know, Louisiana Weekly writer and everything, and I'm still inspired by people like that.
Yes,
because they covered things. You know, a lot of times you'll hear people, former athletes in this town, you know, and I continue to correct them when they say that. They just feel bad because they weren't recognized and their accomplishments weren't covered. And I go, no, your accomplishments were covered.
They were.
Okay, they were covered by people like R.L. Stockard and Marcus Neustatter at the Times-Picayune, and Charles DeLay and Eddie Burbridge, and a lot of names, Jim Hall, a lot of names that people don't remember now. They actually covered you, okay? Yes, they did. You were covered, you were documented, and the whole works. And to say that you weren't covered is a slap in the face to those people. Because to me, what they're saying is, I wasn't covered by white media and white newspapers. In this case, the Times-Picayune, States Item, and whatever, you know. say that, but don't say you weren't covered, because you were.
Yes.
Those people did really terrific work, and they covered you when no one else would. So don't act like they didn't exist, because they did.
Yes. And of course, I mean, I know a lot about Champ Clark because of my relationship with his son, Mark Clark, we did a show together. But even growing up,
I mean,
as a white kid in New Orleans, I knew Champ Clark.
Yeah. You know,
a Grid Week. I mean, come on. Radio.
He was a Grid Week columnist, and he put on these banquets and everything. Where he had famous people coming in these banquets, famous sports figures and politicians, and and he did all this stuff himself.
Right. And then of course boxing.
Yeah. He was the first African American on the State Athletic Commission, and which is the boxing ruling thing in the state and all that, and he used to do the ring announcing. Right.
Did it the Ali fight?
Yes, he did.
Right.
Ali Spinks,
right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
And
let's go back. You said you worked for the New Orleans Jazz. What did you do?
While I was at Loyola and working at Channel 6, I did that all at the same time. I was a salesperson.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a salesperson, which was great to do. I mean, I don't know how many tickets I sold, but I was a salesperson, and I did a little PA when they would have games, like high school games we played before. I might do PA or something for that. But it was great. I mean, it was great to just be around a professional sports franchise, and the people you met and the people you saw. It was terrific.
Talk about the Jazz, because again, look. I feel like that, again, the city supported the team. You could talk about the Shoetown tickets all we want, but okay, that dome had record crowds. It was all about Pistol Pete Maravich, but 74 to 79, it was a fun time here in New Orleans with basketball, and it kind of got ripped away from us from because of an owner that really wanted to be on the West Coast. And of course, there was the amusement tax, which again was the reason why they claimed they had to leave. But your thought, you covered that area, that team, but also you worked there.
It was, you think about it now, about the NBA now and the NBA then.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah, I mean, that was even before.
That's before
drugs had really infiltrated the league.
Yes.
That was even a little bit before that. Come to think of it, I'm sure some of it was going on then. But and the NBA was just a totally different thing. And I'm not talking about style of play, because they were great players and all that good stuff, and it was the highest form of the game, and those sorts of things. But the NBA was so different. I mean, as an entity, I mean, it's become a worldwide thing now.
Right.
And
I mean, we watched the playoffs at 12:05 on a tape delay back then.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Let me tell you.
After midnight.
Let me tell you how different it was.
Right.
I covered the NBA Finals in 1981.
Okay.
At KPLC TV in Lake Charles.
Right.
Ed got on the phone. He called the NBA office, asked for credentials, and they gave us credentials.
Right. I'm doing that today.
Now, not only did they give us credentials, but they told us, I'm sorry, you won't have a seat, you won't have any place to sit. We'll give you credentials, but you won't have a seat at the press
that was Houston, Boston, right?
Right. Larry Bird's first time.
Right.
You won't have, a seat at the press table. Okay, just get me in the building.
Right.
We'll be all right, as long as I can go in the locker room. I get there, and they usher me to my seat on the floor underneath the basket with my cameraman. Okay? Don't forget, it's the Celtics and the Rockets.
Yes.
Okay? Do you know the great video we had of Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale and Moses Malone pushing and fighting? We there.
Man.
So, it's just different. It's a different thing. And I'm glad it is. And I'm glad it's back also.
Yeah, I am too. I thought we got, as a city, I don't want to use the word ripped off, but the NBA was really on a down, on the down at that time. And it wasn't until really when Bird and Magic came in, and that was right after the Jazz left and went to Salt Lake. And again, if the commissioner would have stood strong, I often say if David Stern would have been commissioner, the Jazz would have never left New Orleans.
Yeah, and if the league was a different kind of thing.
Right.
Because, let's face it, The Saints are still here because the league wouldn't let them leave.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, why? Because
the league wouldn't let them leave.
And,
all right. Otherwise, they might be in San Antonio.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I mean, let's be honest
That's
about
the truth.
And, you know, where you had a league that said, no. At that time, in the NBA, you had a league, well, I might want to move my team, so I'm going to vote for him to move.
That's right. Because of the revenue issues they had back
Exactly.
then. Okay,
Exactly.
And the lack of a real TV contract and everything else.
Yeah.
All that happened with Bird and Magic, and again, happened really right after again, 79.
That's right.
You know, you remember the
79-80 was the Bird and Magic's rookie season.
Rookie season.
79-80 season.
Right, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
How was it covering Pistol Pete Maravich?
Oh, it was cool. It was cool. You know, I think the best part, and it's kind of hard to describe this, the best part was practice. Because I saw him do these things, these tricks.
Right.
That made you go, well, why would you think about doing that? You know, I mean, it was that far-fetched, you know? Stuff like, you know, dribbling a ball and going from its highest point to its lowest point and had the same cadence. You know, I mean, just kind of weird stuff, because he was that far, you know, away. Now you can argue that people say, yeah, but he wasn't a team player and all, you know, and yeah, maybe he wasn't, and you know, that's you know, probably true. But as far as just watching somebody play, you know, I mean, he was about as entertaining as any player you'd want to see.
You told a story one time when you were on this program about the inception of the New Orleans Saints. I believe your sister was on the field.
I did?
Yes, you did. And Kenny Tran and you were here. Okay. So you go back with the Saints all the way to the beginning. So talk about 1966, 1967, your family ties there, and then eventually covering this team.
You can't. I have to start with, you know, the exhibition game.
Please.
Before we got the Saints, when we were trying to get the Saints.
Yes.
Here's one of the good parts about my job, my professional life. I got a chance to actually know and become friends with some of those people that my father would tell me, see that guy over there? He said, you know, like, I know Bob Pettit. My dad would go crazy if he knew I knew Bob Pettit. You know what I mean? You know, Dave Dixon was a friend of mine.
Oh my gosh.
I loved it. He was a friend of mine.
What a genuine man.
Yeah, he was just, you know, and so the exhibition games were played here, NFL exhibition games, when New Orleans was trying to get a franchise. You know, I got to go through those also before, you know, it led directly to the Saints to me. It just, you know, it all connected, you know, to me. My sister was in the choir at Xavier University. She was a, you know, music student, and they sang at the first Saints game. They sang Up, Up and Away with Al Hirt. And, you know, they had the balloon and all that good stuff.
I can picture it.
September 17th, 1967. You
Before
know, John Gilliam, the 94-yard kickoff return, the whole works. Everybody came to school the next day sunburned because it was one of those hot, scorching September days.
And everybody went to that game somehow, right?
It seemed like everybody was there. 27-13, Rams beat the Saints, but I didn't care.
Nobody
had
did.
a football team, you know. He had a real pro football team. And it was just, that was a terrific time. My whole family went to that game. You know, and for all of you out there, if you were under 16, it cost $1.
$1.
In the end zone, $1. That's all it cost. So I saw all 7 home games that year for $1.
Yeah.
I mean, for $7.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. 67, the Saints come in. We got a football team. Eventually, you're covering the team. Talk about that.
You know, once again, I mean, it's by that time we're talking about the late 70s when I was there, and then 81 when I came back.
81.
Team was a little better.
That great bum draft, 81.
Yeah.
Ricky Jackson.
Right. City champ.
Yep.
You know, once again, good friend of mine. Love him to death.
Yes.
Yep.
Hall of Famer, like yourself.
Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. And the team's a little better. You know, it's the bum time, you know, but not a whole lot better, but a little better. And it was just fun to be here because they'd won a few more games than they had been winning in the 70s.
Right.
And, you know, you got a chance to know people. It was different covering. It's not like you cover people now.
Right.
You know, I mean, you got to know people. There weren't as many restrictions.
Yes.
You know, Sam, go to Sam Mills. Sam, I'd like to do something on you. You know, yeah, a little, not just a story, get something on you.
Right.
You know, just talk about you. You know, and I'd like to meet you. You know, tomorrow if you got some time. You know, you want to come to the house tonight? Would not happen now.
No,
They are instructed
Right.
not to do that.
No.
Okay.
You have to go through the channels now.
Yeah, you know, he,
Right.
you know, I didn't ask him.
Right.
You know, oh, you want to come out tonight? Okay, all right. Yeah.
Right.
You know, so it's very different now.
Right.
You know, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. If that's the way they want to do it now, but you got a chance to know the people. You know, I mean, I know Bobby Hebert.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, and you know, things like, you know, Frank Warren, when he, you know, late Frank Warren.
Yes.
Great guy. You know, he comes back for old timers, you know, and I get to the stadium, you know, Frank Warren was looking for you. You know, I don't know if that happened now.
Yeah. it's different. There was also another basketball team here before the Jazz. It was the ABA
The
Buccaneers.
Bucks. Ooh. That was good
Talk about
stuff.
those days. That was good stuff. It really
That was good stuff. Another connection here. I got to know and became good friends because we were co-workers with the Jazz, Austin Red Robin.
Yes.
Who was the center on the Buccaneer teams. For those of you who don't know, New Orleans Buccaneers played their games at Loyola Fieldhouse mostly, and they played some at the Municipal Auditorium
Right.
and some at Tulane, but mostly Loyola Fieldhouse. First year of the ABA, 1967, I feel like I saw the ABA twice. In the beginning, in
Yeah.
67, and when I was in the Navy
Okay.
in Norfolk was when Julius Irving was with the
oh,
Squires.
you were so lucky.
Okay.
Oh.
With that red, white, and blue
Oh,
basketball
yes.
and the 22-year-old knees, and you thought
Yes.
what you saw with the Sixers was good. You should have seen
Yes.
that,
Right.
okay? And you could go up, you could just walk up and buy a ticket, and you know, and you know, we went to see him every night. But the ABA Buccaneers, New Orleans Buccaneers, very good team, played for the championship the first year.
Right.
That's right. Red Robbins was the center. You had Jackie Moreland, who was from Louisiana Tech, was first round draft pick of the Pistons in the NBA. Small forward was Doug Moe.
Yes.
Of course, he's North Carolina. You know him as a coach. Jimmy Jones
Yes.
from Grambling, Tallulah, Louisiana Sports Hall of Famer, and
Yes.
went on and had a long NBA career after that. And the point guard was Larry Brown.
Yes, indeed.
It was a really good team. It was a fun team to watch. You got to see people like Connie Hawkins. You know, the Pipers beat the Buccaneers for the championship that year.
Right.
The Pittsburgh Pipers did, and it was fun.
Right.
It was fun basketball.
Right. We also had a USFL team, the New Orleans
The
Breakers.
Breakers. Dick
Sure.
Corey passed away about a year
yes,
or
he
two
did.
ago. You know, and a really good guy.
Yeah.
He was the head coach.
Yeah. Came from Boston, went to New Orleans, eventually ended up in Portland.
Yeah. But Dick Corey, he was offensive coordinator with the Eagles when they went to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl played here, as a matter of fact, when the Raiders beat
That's
the
right.
Eagles. Yeah, he was on Dick Vermeil's staff. But yeah, Dick Corey, you know, he was the kind of guy that, you know, talk about unorthodox professional football. And of course, they want to get as much publicity as they can. You know, we're shooting practice, you know, and did some interviews before or whatever. As we're walking out, and Dick Corey runs over to me and said, "You need to talk to anybody else?" Well, as a matter of fact, I'd like to talk to. He pulled him out of practice. You know,
Right.
That wouldn't happen now.
No way. And especially for a league then that was trying to be able to be noticed, there's no doubt.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure that's part of why he did it. But
But-
he did it.
Yeah, right. Marcus Dupuis. Big. Okay.
Marcus,
that was-
of course, the
okay.
Marcus
Great Marcus
Dupree
Dupuis.
thing. Yeah.
We've only got about 4 minutes left. I want to spend the last couple minutes talking about this induction, but just the college game. From HBCUs to LSU Tulane to, again, Loyola to SUNO, Dillard. Talk a bit about the college game here in Louisiana and New Orleans.
It's, you know, I think it's strong. I think it's always been strong.
Historic,
in
though,
college
also,
football.
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've always had strong collegiate sports.
Yes.
Here, you know, be it LSU or Tulane or Southern or Grambling.
Yes.
You know, Louisiana Tech. We always produced a lot of, you know, terrific athletes, not just football players,
Yes.
but really terrific athletes. Saw a picture recently, and I thought about it, and it was a picture of the 1970 Southern University football team. And
That's pre-Bayou Classic, right?
Right, yeah.
72 was the first Bayou Classic.
Right. And in that picture were Mel Blount, who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Harold Carmichael,
right,
who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Isaiah Robertson, who probably should be in the
in
Pro Football Hall of Fame,
yes,
Kenny Ellis.
Oh gosh.
Okay, they all were in this picture. Okay, of this team, and you know, it always makes me think about how things change as far as college and professional sports. When NFL people during those days would evaluate players, collegiate players, they would say that if you weren't at, playing the Big Ten, the SEC, or the Pac-8 as it was then, well, you weren't playing at a high level of competition, okay? Well, whoever played quarterback for whatever school you were playing, you played for in the SWAC, Grambling, Alcorn, or whatever, when you played Southern, you threw into a secondary that had Mel Blount, Kenny Ellis, Isaiah Robertson, and some other people who played in the NFL, be like Al Beauchamp or Pete Barnes or whatever. But you're told that you weren't playing a high level of competition.
Right.
Well, my thing is that I tell people now is that what was the Southwestern Athletic Conference and the SWAC is what you see in the SEC now.
There's no doubt.
It's not new.
Right.
Okay, it's just where they are. Okay, because the same athletes that you see at LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama now are the same athletes you saw then at Southern, Grambling, Alcorn, Mississippi Valley, Alabama State.
That's the truth.
It's the same, same people.
The truth.
But at that time, because of where they were, it was the level of competition wasn't that good, which wasn't.
Until they got to the NFL. Or the AFL.
Yeah, and a part of it was probably economics. You could get them cheaper, if you felt that way. Some of them you knew you didn't have to draft, so you could get them cheaper, because you knew that maybe some other people weren't going to draft them.
Yep, no doubt. Roe, we got 45 seconds. What does it mean to go into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame?
It means that I must have done what I set out to do, and that's to honor the people who helped me and who protected me and took care of me. And I'm talking about all those people, those grown people, those parents that I grew up under in the lower Ninth Ward, and my teachers at my elementary school who told me that I could do things when I didn't think that I could. It's all about those people. Without them, I'm not here. It's trite. You hear people say that a lot, but they did it. They did it. Okay, they did it, and they used me to do it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It is an honor well deserved.
Well, thank you.
And I know New Orleans is happy for you.
I'm happy that they're happy for me.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being part of this.
All right, thank you for having me.
We appreciate it
All
very
righty.
much. Roe Brown, legend in this town. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there are plenty of ways to catch this program now. You can catch us tonight at 6 p.m. on WLAE-TV. On The Deuce, WLAE-TV 2 at 10 p.m. on Friday night, 9 o'clock Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock on LAE, 2 a.m. on Saturday morning on The Deuce, and then 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television every Saturday afternoon. Always at ericasher.com, always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page, always on our social media platforms, at Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook. Catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM, that is 4 to 6 weekdays. Listen live at ericasher.com. Our podcast is on the Anchor Podcast. Special thanks again to Roe Brown for joining us this very, very special occasion. Also to the WLAE-TV production staff and the fantastic underwriters who underwrite this program. We thank them, and we ask you to really support those underwriters. Also, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson. Also, let me thank Will Ingram, Alex Chacon, and the best director in the business. Of course, that's Will Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Roe Brown, I'm Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.